Thank you. Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar. My name is Marlene. I'm an implementation manager here at Accurx, and I'm going to be presenting today's webinar. So I'm just going to go ahead and wait a little bit before we officially kick things off, as I can see lots of you are still joining. So I'm just going to go ahead and just share my screen for now. Let me see if you can not see my screen. So you should have access to my Q&A. So I'll see anything popping up. Amazing. Thank you. And whilst we just started, and whilst I'm waiting for everyone to join us, I have a quick ask for you. We want to get to know you a bit more and learn how we can best support you, especially through your digital triage journey. So what I have ready for you is a quick poll. So it just should take a few minutes for you to just complete and let us know how we can best help you. So I'm gonna go ahead and launch it now. Again, it should pop up in your screens. So I'm really thankful for your answers. Yeah, amazing. I can see more of you are joining. Welcome. And thank you so much again for completing. This is great. Thank you so much. So you have a few more minutes before we get started. Wow, there's so many of you. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar. Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Gondal. Amazing. So I'm gonna slowly kick things off. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, I'm really, really grateful for all of the answers coming through. This is really helpful. So yeah, I'm going to stop the poll in one moment. So I'm going to stop now and slowly get us started. There's a lot to go through and a lot of exciting things to also talk about today. So just going to go ahead and share these quickly with you. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping before we dive into the subject. First things first, this is being recorded, as some of you might already know, and you're going to receive a copy of today's webinar after today, essentially. And as I said before, you do have access to a Q&A, so if you have any questions, feel free to pop them over there. We do have a lovely implementation and support teams available to help us with any questions. And last but not least, as you can see here, we're being joined by Dr. Hussein Gandhi, a GP partner at the Wellspring Surgery, and you also may know him as Dr. Gondal from EGP Learning. And we also have Dr. Dave Twisker, a GP partner at the Witley Surgery and a clinical consultant here at Accurx. And so before I go ahead and share more with you, I want to make sure that you know what we're going to be covering here today. The first things that we're going to be covering is essentially, I'm just going to stop sharing the poll with you as well. Just give me one moment whilst I do that. So as you can see here, the first thing that I'm going to go ahead and share is what's total triage. Some of you may be completely new to this concept. Some of you may be familiar, but you might have some questions. So I'm going to go ahead and explain that before we dive into the subject of today's webinar. So Dr. Gondalf and Dr. Twisker will be talking about the implementation journey with us here today. And then we'll end the session with a Q&A. And we also share resources for those of you who are looking into getting started with your own digital digital triage journey or your total triage journey. So yeah, stay tuned until the end. We also have some lovely surprises for you. So yeah. Um, yeah, what I'm gonna be doing now, as I said, is I'm just gonna simply explain what total triage is. Right now in the screen, you can see a quick image explaining the traditional model. I bet that most of you are already very familiar with this model. As you can see here, in this traditional model, there's a significant amount of staff time that is used to collect basic information from patients, and the patient's involvement is often limited to phone calls and brief face-to-face discussions, while clinicians and admin staff juggle extensive scheduling and admin tasks. As you can see here, again, I don't think I'm explaining anything new, but the patient usually gets in touch with the practice by walking into the practice or calling the practice. Then we have limited information or no information at all being taken to help with triage. And if there's an appointment available, the patient is offered an appointment. If not, the patient is asked to call the practice back. And we all know how repetitive that can be and frustrating as well. Once the patient gets through and gets an appointment, sometimes that appointment might be quite unnecessary, or it actually might not help solve any of the patient needs and problems. So, what we have been helping some of you, I would say most of you, doing in the past years, it's actually moving to a digital led um, care journey and what we essentially call total triage. With this model, the patient contributes with key details such as their symptoms and medical histories electronically. This approach preserves clinical time for tasks requiring professional expertise, while patients become more engaged in their healthcare. So, if you're wondering what is auto triage, to put it simply, it's a general practice workflow where every patient submits some level of information around their requests before being offered an appointment if one is needed at all. With these digital-led care model, as you can see here, the patient still gets in touch with the practice by walking in or calling the practice if they don't have access to let's say internet or a smartphone. But the difference here is that you're going to have a member of your reception team capturing information on behalf of the patient and submitting a request on behalf of the patient. And we do have a dedicated tool called Reception Flow for that. And then the request is sent to your Accurx inbox into a specific folder. For those who can go online, they can either access the form via their smartphones, computer, or even by the NHS app. They complete the request themselves, and that's also sent through the Accurx inbox. It's all going to go into a dedicated folder in your Accurx inbox where you can have an overview of all of your patient demand, and that will enable you to either resolve the queries immediately or also assign the requests to a dedicated or let's say the relevant team member or teams. You can also leverage the other Accurx products that you have access to, such as Selfbook, to invite a patient to book an appointment if it's necessary. You can also send a patient questionnaire to collect more information, or you can just start a two-way conversation with your patients via SMS. And all of that should result in you delivering timely care to your patients, or also signposting your patients to any local services, or just providing self-care and guidance as well. So yeah, as you can see here, it seems quite simple. We're going to dive into that. All of that just to let you know that basically with this total triage model, what you are doing is funneling all of the requests to one inbox. It's going to give you a better sense of the patient demand. It will help you tackle the 8 a.m. rush and also make the experience better, both for your staff, but also for your patients, and also make it a bit more equitable as well for those who cannot go online and complete the requests themselves. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and now and dive into our subject. My big question around implementing this total triage model is for you, Dr. Gondalf. What does all of that mean for practices and especially regarding the GP contract? Is there anything in particular you would like to say about that? Yeah, that's such a good reminder. And again, I'd say that this is the perfect opportunity for us to dive into that. Like, how do you implement a total triage model and also do it efficiently to make sure that it works for you as a practice and also your patients? I actually have a few questions for both you and Dr. Dave Twiska as well. My first question is essentially like, what factors led your practice to adopt like a digital triage model, in particular total triage? And what were the challenges as well that you were facing when you decided to adopt this model? Wow. Also, like, I love it because you are talking about like what led you to implement this change, but also the benefits that you got. And I mean, I'm just wondering as well, like, it's easy to think about the benefits now because like you've gone through the change, you've implemented, you've had like few months to just like see, okay, this was worth it. But my question around that as well is like, what were the initial concerns when you once you've decided to move? What were you thinking about? Oh, like, did you have any specific fears or concerns regarding the patient care and the workflow at your practice? And how did you overcome that?
Sorry, I'm just trying to fix some of the things going on the screens. Bear with me one
Okay.
second. That should hopefully
The
fix
joys
it
of
from there.
tech.
Yeah, joys of tech. So hopefully everybody on the YouTube can now hear me. That should have fixed things. Apologies for those who couldn't earlier, and I really do apologise for that. That should have fixed it. But effectively, the we had access champions supporting our patients with the navigation. We had a care coordinator that we had with our PCN who came on a regular basis to support patients in terms of access things like the NHS app and doing it on the website. So those kind of things can help from there. I think the anxiety about any change is always significant. That will never go away. And having guides to help people understand how to do that is a really powerful thing. And I know for me, a lot of that was the community around me that helped to do that. So I mentioned Dave a couple of times, various others from different places as well. So having that community to help you understand it has been a really powerful thing.
Wow, impressive. And yeah, again, you're speaking to the power of community. We have more on that later. Oh yeah, I was also wondering again, how long did it actually take you and your team to implement like a different way of working essentially? Like, and whilst doing it as well, again, was there anything that was quite unexpected that you had to you didn't think about, but then you had to overcome as you were doing the transition to total triage?
Also, there's loads of things that will come that you're not expecting, that much I can guarantee you. But yeah, in total, 6 months, we started the journey because there's various different things you need to figure out. You need to process map your practice and the patient journey currently to what it's then going to look like and who's going to be responsible for those different aspects. There's training that needs to happen in terms of supporting your team to understand how things are going to be different. What do you need to do in the interim? What do you need to have ready for when you go live? There are various different steps of this journey that need thinking out as well. So this is not something I feel that you can do in a week or a month. You need to dedicate some time to figuring out, because this is the big thing. This is the thing that everybody uses. This is how everyone comes into your practice. So if you're not spending time to figure that out and having the structure and things to help you understand that, it's going to feel overwhelming. And what will then happen is everyone will just want to go back to what it was, because what it was at least comfortable. It's something people understood. But it's recognized that it's going to need time. There's going to be times where it doesn't work, but actually sticking with it, a lot of those things smooth out. If I was to go back to my team now and say that we were going back to what we did, I'd have a mutiny, simply put. I'd have people leave instantly, because that's how much of a difference it's made.
Yeah, that's actually such a good point, because I was wondering, how did you manage your team's expectations during the transition, your patients, and even how did you get buy-in as well? I know that usually I advise people to communicate as much as possible, but I'm wondering, like, how did you do that? Did that work?
Sorry, just say that again for me, Molly.
That's okay. So I was just wondering, how did you manage the expectations for your team and staff during the transition? Like, how did you get buy-in?
Sure. So communication's key. It is having that open dialogue and being able to talk to your team throughout it. We had regular checkpoint meetings. I even created something called the WASP, so the Wellspring Access Plan, effectively. So we had this giant thing in the back of our reception that was a physical representation of all the change management steps that we were going through. Many people know I'm a tech geek, but sometimes tech is not also the right way to do that. So although the management team could see it on things like Kanban boards and stuff like that, having a similar physical representation for the practice team to just literally walk past and see, that was a really powerful thing. But it all comes down to communication, communication, communication.
Amazing. Again, that's the key word, actually. And yeah, I was also wondering, in terms of achieving, I'd say, a bit more of efficiency and like managing the workload, what has been the biggest difference? Like, what, I mean, I'm thinking about what did you get, but also what kind of tools or features you have used, in particular, like Accurx features, for instance, to help you with the transition, applying that and achieving efficiency.
I think for us, being able to utilize the information capture aspect, so obviously through the forms, both in terms of the direct access ones that the patients will have, but then the ones that we can send to the patients, so things like the florries and that kind of thing, to capture more specific information to understand particular parts of the patient journey, and also help us risk assess who needs specific support and who doesn't. That's been really important to us. I think being able to allocate within teams the different ways that information flows, so then that can be shared quickly and easily with the relevant people to make sure that that workload is managed effectively. And also just being able to allocate which ones we feel are a slight priority as well has been quite important.
Thank you so much for sharing. And how well did that like implementation of total triage and using Accurx also integrated with the rest of the workflows and systems that you have in your practice?
So we've fully changed the way the practice runs. Our entire on-call system now runs through a triage model. So the person who manages the triage also is responsible for all the acute demand that comes through for that particular time frame. So we do a half-day session covering that. And then as a result of that, that then feeds into all the other acute demand for the practice. does mean that's a bit more busy and intense, but then what the subsequent payback for that for the clinicians is that their normal clinics are just routine clinics where they can spend time with patients, deal with the workload that comes through that, and do that in a way that they know that there's not some additional aspects of care coming through, which, unlike our previous system, that was not necessarily the case.
Oh, that's actually really interesting. I was wondering if you could share a bit more about that. And I'm sure like lots of people have questions about how you also handle urgent requests. And how do you like did that help in reducing unnecessary appointments, for instance, like all of that? How does that work with your appointments book, for instance?
So I think we deal with everything on the day. So everything has to be dealt with on the day. If the patient's not available for that day, then we say you just simply contact us another day on the day that you're available. That's been a bit of a shift for many patients, obviously not being able to book ahead for GP access and things. But the reason we felt that was important was because that's helped to significantly reduce our non-attendance rate as a result of it, which actually had significant challenge with the population that we look after. So just by nature of doing that, we've actually increased our capacity by about 20% because we've reduced the DNAs significantly by moving to an on-the-day system. I think there's always exceptions to the rule. So there are certain patients where you just realize you have to pre-plan and book ahead with, but often those are patients with significant health needs that need that extra care and attention anyway. I think in terms of the urgent access side of things, the benefit is we've got an idea of what that urgent issue is, so then we can manage that effectively in terms of, do we need to be seeing that, or does that actually need to be dealt with more effectively by another part of the system, and therefore we can signpost the patient towards those aspects as well.
Amazing. So yeah, like I feel like you really thought about that. And again, as you said, maybe like other streams of care are not like jumping on you like as a surprise.
Yeah.
So yeah. And so like you touched a little bit on that. I was just wondering if you have noticed any trends, or if you've noticed if the level of satisfaction from your patients has increased as well as a result, or has it gone the other way around, or your patients are still adjusting?
General feedback is patients significantly have appreciated the new system, the knowledge that they have contact with us on the day when they need it. We have noticed a trend that actually we don't have an 8 a.m. rush, we have a 9 a.m. rush, weirdly. So people now, I think when they're getting up, that's when our volume significantly increases. So the biggest demand comes from between 9 and 10 o'clock in the morning with what we can track through the analytics and the information we're getting through. So yeah, ours is a slightly different time, but then that's also filtering in through the rest of the day as well. So patients being able to access when they feel they need to. The biggest thing is, like I said, the fact that we're not telling the patients that we are shut at 9 o'clock in the morning like we had to do previously because of capacity aspects and the reality that we just did not have enough capacity to manage that. So to do so safely means now that we generally say to most patients, we can offer you care. We do close ours off at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We feel that's a safe way to do so, so that gives us time to manage the amount that's coming through. But then that simply means if patients do need us after 4 o'clock, then they call through, so then we can deal with that on a live basis rather than it potentially being an inbox that may be seen not for another half an hour or so until later on.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I have one last question before we also hear a bit more about Dr. Dave Triska's journey. My last question is, what key lessons have you learned from implementing total triage with digital tools that you think could benefit other practices? Like one thing that I think you must notice.
So I'm going to give you two. Number one, I wish I'd done it sooner. Number two is communicate with people the journey, because that's how it becomes more successful. It is talking through the journey and sharing that with everyone, because actually the better you do that, the smoother the transition will be.
Thank you so much. And I guess it makes sense. It's bringing people along the journey with you. Again, communication. Thank you so much for answering your questions. I'm sure there's lots of questions in the Q&A. So I'm going to go ahead, and also I'm quite keen to hear a bit more about Dr. Triska's journey, and then we can open up for questions in the Q&A. So hello, Dr. Dave Triska.
Hello, how's things?
Good, thank you. So I'm going to ask my questions because I'd love to know if there's like similarities and contrasts. My first one is, what factors led your practice to adopt total triage, and what were the specific challenges you were facing when you decided to move to this model?
I can remember the exact moment as it happened. It was a practice where we didn't have any triage. We didn't even have phone appointments. So everything was seen in person, and there were a couple of emergency overflow clinics a day. And it was in one of the clinics at lunch, and I was seeing someone who'd tried to kill themselves a couple of days before. And the only thing on my mind at that point was that we had a full clinic still to go and visits to do. And I thought, this is not the way to do medicine, because it was completely unable to be there for that person. That was because of the pressures of what was happening. And the reason why that was happening, I thought, was simply that we didn't know what people wanted from us, because people were bucking in for extremely trivial things that most definitely were administrative and didn't need a GP, but equally being treated exactly the same as someone who had severe health conditions and problems. So the logical thing for me was to find out what people needed from us, and following the same train of logic, it was, wouldn't it be good if they could write that down? Because phones have a limitation in terms of how long it takes to go through things. And there we were. So we went from nothing to everything in 6 weeks. So from the decision point to actually changing over completely, it was only 6 weeks. So you had a very frenetic period of time, and saw immediate benefits the same day. And it was remarkable, the change that happened. So I hope that gives people some comfort, who have probably sat on the call thinking, gosh, we're a long way away from being able to do that. I don't think there could have been a further point away than we were at that time. And now it's something like Andy, we just wouldn't go back.
Wow. And yeah, you've done it in 6 weeks. My question is like, how did you do that in 6 weeks as well? Like, again, I'm wondering, like, how did you, again, get the buy-in from your practice, your patients? How do you actually implement that? Like, what were the steps?
Not many. I think most change management's easy to do if you give people what they need and want. And what practice wanted was an efficient system. The staff wanted not to be shouted at. The GPs wanted time with patients, and the patients wanted to be seen, or well, to be helped in other ways as well, because we had our online flow now. So actually, the easiest thing to do was to make it the best thing for everyone. So in fact, rather than having lots of barriers, one of the great bits about Accurx is that with the free flow forms it has, it's not a barrier to people getting red flagged off to A&E for a fungal toenail infection or similar. They have certainty that they're going to get help, they're going to get a response. And the clinicians now have a completely different day. So seeing things where we have some expectation of what's coming in, time to prepare, time to understand. And we often have people join us from other practices now who are just really surprised at A, how quickly they get help, even routine help, and B, that we actually understand their medical record and their health journey, because we're not doing this all on the fly firefighting as tens of people are queuing in the waiting room. Often the waiting room's empty, which is not saying we're not busy. It's just because everything's so structured and runs well now.
Wow, I'm sure there's like practices here dreaming about having the same thing right now. I'm just wondering as well, like, because you said it was quite easy for you to take the decision, but a bit like I asked Dr. Gondalf, like, did you actually have any concerns once you've decided to move to this model? What were your fears and concerns? Because I'm sure, again, you still had some.
Yeah, so the same concerns that everyone raises at any practice change that I do. So I think I'm now into north of 150 practices that I've helped move into this model. And so when I do meetings with practices now, initially I hold a bingo card up, which I've already written all the concerns on, and promise I'll reveal it at the end. And indeed, it's always the same thing. So we hear, what about people who can't access online? What about the elderly? What about people who are going to phone? What about the vulnerable? And actually, none of these things comes true anywhere. I mean, I've done it so many times in different practices now. First of all, patients are very straightforward in the sense that all they want is to get help. If you make that way of getting help easy for them and accessible, they're more than happy to do it. For the ones who can't use online, which is a very small proportion, I think our oldest online users are 107 in their own requests. The ones who can't use the online, of course, we've still got our reception teams. I know, just because I checked before the webinar, our call waiting time for the surgery now is 30 seconds. So for when people are calling the surgery, that's how long on average they have to wait to speak to a human being. So I think if you compare that to an hour on the phone at 8 o'clock in the morning for people who are elderly and have significant health needs, to actually that avenue has opened up completely for them, because of course the bulk of the population are more than happy to use online. So it wasn't, none of the fears came true at all. With every change of any kind, there's always going to be difficult patches, and learning, working in a different way, consulting in a different way when you're doing it remotely. But month in, everything was settling in, and that iterative change about tweaking things, adapting things, because of the way that the surgery now runs through Accurx, and having this total flow, total triage, then that makes it feels much more adaptable now. I don't think we're going to be stuck in just a single way of working ever again, really.
Wow. And like similar to what I asked before, because like from what you're saying, it seems quite easy, but I'm wondering, how did you manage expectations from your staff as well, getting buy-in? Because like, again, as you said, with every change, there's a little bit of apprehension.
There is, and I think it was having the confidence that what we were saying was going to happen was going to happen. I mean, this was some years ago now, but you know, in this day and age now, this is not new. So many hundreds and thousands of practices have done this now. So it's not the dark anymore. It's a jump into the known. And as I say, for my own experience with all those practices I've helped, it's always the same. The journey is always the same. The steps that people go through, the worries, the success, the realization that gosh, I wish I'd done this a long time ago. Told you so, by the way. I laughed when you said that. But it's not difficult to persuade people that if life is going to be easy, you'll enjoy your job more. I think some of those concerns about the what ifs are answered in short, particularly the amazing web articles that are hosted on the Accurx site in the user spaces now and on Facebook. There's a community, both the WhatsApp and Facebook groups are very active, so you can actually ask and get it from the horse's mouth from people who've done it, and everyone says much the same thing. So I think if anyone's nervous now about thinking, gosh, that's a lot to do, I'd say you really want to be doing this now, because what you don't want to do is be doing this when it's forced upon you later on in the year. Do it when it's your choice, do it at the speed that you're comfortable with, and you've got plenty of time to prepare for October onwards.
That's so important, as you said, to make sure that you're doing it at your own speed. So again, you also have time to learn and see what you need to change or not. My other question was around that. You talked about the steps and the fact that the steps are quite similar. I was wondering, what were the steps for you? What were the key tools, especially like Accurx tools, that you use to help you implement that and make sure that whatever workflow you have set up for your practice is efficient?
Yeah, I think so, particularly the online training resources for learning the product. I mean, it's so ubiquitous now. If you've actually used SMS speech, which the bulk of people in the country have, you'll be familiar with what patient triage looks like, because it's all the same. The steps of the practices are really about preparing for a change in working. So as Gandhi was saying, it's not just about sticking on an online form. If you do that and don't do the rest of it well, things don't go well, because you can't suddenly drown an already drowning system. So we, like most practices do, had a cut-off date where we said essentially no pre-booking beyond this date. Then that gives us a clear deck to rearrange what the appointments we wanted, the length of appointments, communicated it to patients with batch messaging. And then, as we went into the new way of working, since then we've had the options for self-book, which has made a real difference in terms of being able to engage patients with the process. And all of these things, actually, it's not too difficult if you just put yourself in the shoes of the person that you want to convince. If you're a patient, how would you want this to work? Well, I'd want it to be accessible and to get a quick answer one way or the other. Done, sold. Then people are going to do that thing again and again. If it's the staff, you want to make sure that their sessions are structured so that when they're doing clinical facing work, it's nice normal set appointments where they have time with patients, they know what they're coming in for. So the actual process steps are really very, very similar. I think the things that changes from practice to practice are the speed at which they wish to do it, their prior experience, and it's absolutely fine to lean on those people in the communities with lots and lots of experience at this now. So as I say, this is not a leap into the unknown anymore. This is a very well structured space.
Oh, thank you so much. And on that as well, I was wondering if you had to redesign the system from scratch to make sure that you're meeting the needs both of your patients and staff. And a little bit like I asked Dr. Gondath, I'm wondering, what does the system look like at your practice right now in terms of appointments and dealing with urgent queries, for instance, or routine appointments?
Sure. So I did some work looking at what percentage of people want to have on the day care. So we look back at our historic records, and it turned out it was about 80% of people, which kind of fits with what we expect. So we do actually have a proportion of pre-bookable appointments for our practice, but in essence, the structure is make it the one way for everything. So no matter which way people enter the surgery pool, whether that's coming to reception, whether or not that's ringing, whether or not that's coming online, it's all treated the same way. And we do use a clinician to do the triage, because I think clinicians are very good at doing triage because we have the medical knowledge to do it.
Sorry, Dr. Dave, cannot hear anyone anymore. I'm not sure if it's just me.
I think there's some background noise. Not much.
Yes, I can hear some noise. Oh, I hope I can hear you now. I think I can hear you now.
We're good. So the structure is that it's just the one way into the practice. Everyone's treated equally. So you get a very quick response whether or not you go online or use the phone. Actually, most people want to use the online bit because it's easy for them. But we a long time ago, thanks to Total Triage, like 2 or 3 years ago now, I think dropped to a maximum of 25 appointments a day for clinicians, 15-minute appointments, be they phone or in person, and no extras. And that's really just entirely possible because we're actually scrutinizing what's coming through. Strangely enough, not saying no to lots of people, but maybe gently signposting some. But it's not the barrier that some people think it should be. Actually, it's more of an open causeway, and actually people kind of self-regulate in terms of clinicians quickly. Lots and lots of people are happy to take advice for self-care, and it's cut down enormously on the minor things that we would have been seeing historically. And essentially now we've got the space to deliver really good care. I think our same day appointments are normally booked within an hour or two at most for most people, and the routine appointments average out at something like 12 to 48 hours. So it's just a dramatically different system. I can remember the week before we changed, my average wait was 5 weeks to see me. So why would you ever go back to that?
That's a good question. And I have one last question for you as well, which is a similar question again. What are the key lessons that you have learned from implementing Total Triage with digital tools like Accurx? And what would you like to share with practices? What you think could benefit them?
If it feels frightening, it's probably something you should be doing. Don't worry about making mistakes on the way, because we don't progress without mistakes. I think an NHS failing in general is that perfection slows down progress, and people want to go for the 100% solution on day one, which is rarely possible. And then actually what they're left with is this completely suboptimal standard of care that's just not anywhere near as good as what they could do at 90% success. So don't worry about moving forwards. That's the whole point of change. Moving forwards is always lessons learned. It's never going to be perfect the first time. What you really want to benchmark is, where am I now versus what does that look like, even if it's not perfect? And 100% of the time, the imperfect future is better than the imperfect past.
That's really well said. Thank you so much, Dr. Dave Triska. What I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to open the Q&A, but before I do so, there's just a few things I want to share with you so you can have as much time as possible to ask any questions to our two experts here. I'm sure you have lots of questions. So the first thing that I actually wanted to share with you, as promised, if you're getting started with your implementation of Total Triage, we do have you, we actually have you covered. It will be quite easy for you to get started. We have over here a quick guide for you, especially as we're thinking ahead of the GP contract requirements on the 1st of October. We have here a number of initiatives running to help you. We've almost 1,000 practices currently using Accurx Total Triage model. We've used their feedback to create a helpful guide and these resources to get you started. All you need to do is scan the QR code to download your quick start guide to get ready before the busy October flu period. And this guide gives you access to bespoke peer support an exclusive Total Triage community where you can bounce around questions and ideas, and team-wide training from our implementation team. You also have the chance to get free lunch for your practice if you complete the first 2 steps within 2 weeks. And I'm going to tell you a bit more about that. Essentially, what you can do, and just before I share a bit more about what you can do, actually, I need to make sure that I remind you about the first 2 steps. So again, I think some of you might heard about these. I want to make sure that it's clear for everyone. We have over 1,000 practices nationally using what we call reception flow, which enables you to submit requests on behalf of patients who cannot submit a form themselves because they don't have access to a smartphone, a computer, or internet. So you can go ahead and submit a request on behalf of the patients who walk into the practice or call you in the phone. This improves patients' access to care by promoting online access for the majority. You freeing up the phone lines for those who cannot go online, and for those who actually need it, and enable you to just record the request on their behalf quite quickly and easily. This way, you're still going to be able to funnel all of the requests into the same Accurx inbox, treating your patients equally and triaging them based on their clinical need, and not necessarily automatically booking appointments for those who contact you first. So yeah, this is really important. Remember the name Reception Flow, because if you are using Reception Flow, and especially if you're quite new, we do have rewards for you. If you download this quick start guide, again, all you need to do is scan the QR code and submit more than 20 requests before the 28th of March. You're going to enter a prize, basically a draw, where we're going to be drawing practices, and we're going to get in touch with you offering an in-person training session. So I would say just get started now. 20 requests, that goes really quickly. And then also, if you submit more than 50 reception flow requests, you're going to get a free lunch for your whole practice. And it's, again, if you do it before the 20th of March, so you do have some time. And just to make it quite clear, it's not just individual reception flow requests. It's not just for an individual, it's for the whole practice. So as I said, I'd say it's quite easy. Let us know if you have any questions. As I said, all you need to do is just scan the QR code. And last but not least, we also have, as I said, ambassador training sessions, so peer support training available for you. Again, it's all in the quick start guide. And if you attend one of those sessions, you can also refer another practice to attend that session. And that basically gives you a chance to win a £1,000. All you need to do is simply share the link from the step 1 in the quick start guide, and then ask your referee to include your email address in the referral section. And we'll announce the winner of the prize at the end of April. And yeah, I would say each referral counts as an entry. So the more you refer, the better your chances of winning the £1,000. So as promised, I'm going to go ahead and open for questions. And yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and check the Q&A. I would say Dr. Gondalf and Dr. Dave Triskas, if you see any questions that I think are quite interesting, go ahead and yeah, feel free to just answer them. Wow, I can see there's lots of questions. Thank you so much for the questions.
Can I start with one, Marlene? I think there's a good common theme. Is someone was asking about what proportion of things are diverted away from in-person or phone appointments. So a rough rule of thumb, which tends to go quite well, is a rule of thirds. So probably a third or so of things on average for practices will be able to be diverted, either resolved or signposted elsewhere at the triage point, and then a third of each again will be a face-to-face or phone appointment. This is an average, so practices will have slightly different rates to it. So when people become more experienced, that remote resolve rate tends to go up. So for experienced practices, it runs probably somewhere about 40–45%. So when people say, oh, actually, it's a lot of extra contacts that people are getting, it really doesn't work out to lots of extra appointments because of the speed and the efficiency rate of which that remote resolve happens.
Thank you so much for helping with the questions. There's actually lots of questions over here. So yeah, again, I'm not sure if you have a preference. There's like questions about how many queries do you usually deal with a day, and how many appointments do you offer a day? And yeah, and like another question around how does that work if you have specific patient lists for your GPs?
So in terms of queries, so my practice is 11,500 patients. So just adjust depending on your size. So on a Monday, we'll get roughly about 250 to 280. That includes administrative queries as well. So it counts as all of those. Normally at that point, people start, the face drops a little bit and they go, that's a lot more than a GT session, but it's not the same as being a GT doctor. So and doing this with online consulting is a completely different experience, as I'm sure Hussein can attest to. So it sounds a lot, and there's lots of tools on the Accurx website about you can estimate it for your practice, but I would stress it is absolutely not the same in terms of the experience. It's much lighter.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I think for our practice, our Monday morning, like most practices, that's the busiest and most chaotic period. We will take about 120 just in the first few hours, and then it starts to peter down after that. So yeah, I'd probably say similar numbers for a Monday morning for us, for what Dave mentioned. Following days, it's generally a bit less than that, and average I'd probably say for a Wednesday is about 150 for the whole day. So you will see changes in the way that patients approach you. The cool thing with that is that you can then start to tailor your capacity to your actual demand. So after a while, you will get a better sense of what is actually coming through. And therefore, that means that it's easier for you to adapt. So then if for some reason you have a high demand on I think everyone will be Mondays, but if your second most busy day happens to be a Wednesday because of local population factors, then actually you can tailor your capacity to meet that, because you've now got the intelligence to tell you that's happening on a regular basis, rather than just assuming that you're going off it based on what you feel is happening.
Thank you so much. Again, let me know if you have other questions. I have one here that's quite complex, and it's for you, Dr. Gondal.
Okay.
So it's asking, do you use an algorithm for the number of slots you have available versus the number at which you switch off Accurx, especially if you don't book in advance and deal with on the day?
So we haven't got to the point where I've got an algorithm for that. That'd be cool. I'm pretty sure we could probably look at doing something like that in the near future. I think part of the challenge is still you will have local factors that change your capacity. You'll have local factors that change your demand. But I think we have, like I say, on average, call it 200 on a Monday. Requests coming through. The following day is a little bit less, and then Friday picks up a little bit more. So matching your capacity and demand to that is important. So we will have more GPs, for example, working on a Monday, Tuesday, and then middle of the week, we actually have less GP sessions, and that builds up again Thursday, Friday to deal with the fact that we know that the demand is going to increase from there. Whereas then in the middle of the week, we'll probably do more of our long-term condition cares and our other kind of AHP resources, because the reality is we've still got a space issue. So it's figuring out where you can fit people in to match the needs of your patients.
Thank you so much. I have another one. Again, I'm not sure if you both have an answer for these, but I'm sure that, again, it's a question that it's on a lot of people's minds. And I know that here at Accurx, we're looking into that as well and trying to do what we can to help you. But it's about the GP contract, essentially. And it's asking you how you're going to do from October to comply with the GP contract and leaving the form open until 6:30.
I can lead off if you like.
Go for it.
I think the critical thing is the details are not here yet.
Yeah.
But it's likely that this is going to split into urgent versus non-urgent contacts. Admittedly, I don't personally ascribe to that as a particularly brilliant way of splitting up demand, because how do you know when something's urgent? But aside from that, what probably will happen is that practices will be leaving the forms on throughout the day, but there'll be some kind of streamlining of what people can actually submit, perhaps with some front-end stuff in there to divert them away if it is actually an urgent problem. I mean, there's always the the longer answer about is general practice an emergency service, which of course it's not. But I think given the flexibility of how people do work with total triage, this isn't as big a tweak as I think as people are worried about. It will be if you've never done this before, but if are an experienced total triage practice, so that's why it's worth getting cracking. I think this is just going to be probably a factor of just slightly adjusting duty sessions and how many occur per day and who's doing what.
And I think that's the key point that Dave mentioned. So the contractual change is about routine health issues. It's not saying that you have to be available all day, every day for what is classified as urgent health issues. And again, perception of what is urgent varies very much so. But the key thing is that it will be for routine medical health issues. So, is this about a review of your medicines, for example? Is this about your chronic disease management? Those kind of things absolutely would be more often a routine aspect. So therefore, they would probably need to be streamed differently. And I think we'll need to see, possibly some changes in the way that that comes in. So as Dave mentioned, that the quickest fix is you have a routine and an urgent. Again, it's clarifying what does urgent mean for people, because urgent often means various different things.
Yeah, thank you so much. And again, I guess we're going to have to wait to know a bit more about the specifics. But yeah, I think it's a good start. Hopefully this is helpful for all of you, because for me, it's quite helpful. Yeah, and then I actually am having lots of questions regarding appointments. What do you do if you have lots of queries on the day? What happens as well in terms of capping, if you use capping? So I was wondering if you had a bit more to share about that, like what, because I'm having lots of questions around having lots of queries on a day, then trying to deal with everything on a day, and how many appointments you have available on a day, for instance.
So I guess for us, we have a system whereby if we feel that we're getting towards our on-the-day capacity, we currently will switch it off. I know that's not always felt like the best way to do things, but I think the reason we do that is because we run an on-the-day service. Everything is seen that day. We don't pre-book in advance as a result of that, so that we know that the following day we may have better capacity to manage that, and that we generally find that works better. As ever, there's some exceptions. So, that your more vulnerable patients, we will always make exceptions for those kind of ones because of need, but we will then signpost those patients who need additional support elsewhere. I think I would like to move to a situation where we are running, for the whole day, every day. But again, what can you do if you've got 3 doctors off sick on a day? Your capacity is just gone. So you need to be able to be flexible and adapt to those kind of situations. And often that tends to be the reason why we're having to call it quits a bit earlier, is because of external factors, not because of the fact we don't have the capacity. It's because other things have meant that that's had to change what we do.
Thank you so much. And I have another question that's a bit linked to that, I think other circumstances, but I have a question asking, what subset of staff do you assign your appointments to in your surgery? For instance, A&P, GP, nurses, paramedic, etc.
So good, Dave?
Yeah, I think all of the above, really. So you get the most benefit if you have the most staff functions filtered through this. So self-book links particularly are extraordinarily helpful for shaving minutes off the amount of time it takes to help a patient, either administrative staff having to manually book it or the clinician calling them up or similar. So I'd say get as much as possible done through this system as you can. There's always going to be some nuances when there are sort of different slot lengths and times for various dressings with nurses, for example. But the more goes through this, first of all, it's easy for the patients. So one of my pet hates is when people say, no, you can't use the online form for nursing appointment, you have to ring reception, and it makes no sense. So just make it make sense for patients. Like, does this make sense to me? If so, do it. If it's anything care related, ideally have it all done in the same way. Then it's easier for staff to manage. They're not looking lots of different places, easier for patients to understand.
And I'd echo that. I think it's important to remember that many patients don't know the breadth of the different roles that sit within general practice. Let's be honest, many of our existing people working in practice don't know the breadth of the various different roles that currently work in practice. So how can you allocate patients to say you need to see this kind of person, and for them to tell you that? They may not know. They may not know that your HCA can deal with different parts of healthcare, like checking the blood pressure and the weight, because that's all they need doing. They may not know that your nurse practitioners can deal with actually common minor illnesses and things, and that they feel that has to be dealt with by a GP. But if they're a lower complexity case, that's perfectly sensible and reasonable to do. So having everything go through one place and then supporting the patient by directing to the right person to see them at the right time, I don't think we can expect patients to get that right every single time. So that's part of the reason why the filtering that you get through a triage mechanism can be so powerful, and therefore everything going through that route helps. And then again, it's about the data. It's about being able to say that actually we have the data to know what's coming through, because it's all coming through from one place, rather than you having to capture that data in 7 different ways.
Thank you so much for both of your responses. I have another question. This one is more about continuity of care. How do you ensure that for I cannot say this word, but yeah, how do you ensure continuity of care, especially like with illnesses like flu and after tests with the same GP with this model?
So I think for us, one of the things that the triaging clinician's responsibility, the GP's responsibility is to try and support continuity of care. So they will look back through the records from those individual requests to see who's the last person that dealt with that patient. You know, are they available today? Are they available another day? Is it better it's dealt with by that person? Or actually, is this a contact that can be dealt, or potentially could be dealt with by anybody, or does need continuity as a priority? And then giving the patient the choice of, here are your options. Do you want to see that person that offered you continuity that knows you, or do you feel this is something that's best seen by this person, or do we take that decision because we feel the medical need supports the fact that this needs to be dealt with by somebody else because of urgency? Because let's be honest, everybody's not in every single day.
Thank you so much. And yeah, and I have another question as well. I know you talked about these. Basically, the question is, what happens when signposting if your local pharmacy first offer is inconsistent? Do you end up having to deal with the patient request again later in the day?
I think that's probably a pharmacy first question, really, rather than a triage question per se. But what I would say is that so we have a perfectly good pharmacy first offering locally, but we refer very few people to it, because by the time we'd have actually done the referral and gathered all the information, guess what? If you're doing it in a total triage model with online consulting and messaging, you probably could manage those 7 conditions. And so I actually got told off by local ICB because I wasn't using pharmacy first enough, which was sort of an interesting thing to be told off for. But I think this gives you such flexibility for minor ailments, and it gives you an understanding early on about, basically, is this something that I can resolve? And we mustn't underwrite the capabilities we have as experienced clinicians to actually do that. So we are often the best people to manage those conditions, and it's always worth thinking, when I'm training people, I give them the rule of a minute, so which is to say, could I come to a conclusion about this problem or solve it within the minute of time that I've got to think about it, and so on. And if you can, you probably should be doing it at that triage point. And that's where a lot of the efficiencies come from in the system. Anything that encourages rework, where it's bouncing back from various different places, it's first of all, the patients are not going to want to use your online system anymore because they've tried it and they didn't get the care they wanted. And second of all, they're going to be really cross as well. So do try and make as much use of external bodies, but we are often people who can resolve a lot of these things very quickly.
Thank you so much. This is really helpful. And I have one last question, as I realize that we're coming at time. This one is more about concern, I'd say. The question is, the statement is, I'm concerned it will very quickly de-skill our reception team, who are very good currently at signposting to other providers. If you take this away, surely the triaging GP is having to deal with queries they weren't having to deal with before.
I disagree with that. I think this can enhance the signposting, because actually it still requires the team who are supporting those patients who are coming to you directly to navigate the patients to other options. Yes, that may mean if you've got more coming through the online route that you'll be signposting, but then you can incorporate your team to say, actually, these are the ones that can be supported by signposting to other services, and having them support you in terms of doing that.
Thank you. Any last words before we go?
I guess I'd love to mention one of the resources that I know myself and Dave have created. I think will have real benefit for many people out there. So Dave's created an absolutely amazing Florey builder out there. If you haven't had a chance to take a look at it, I know that's going to be coming with some of the resources that's coming through. And also I know the one that many people are concerned about is text message length, because a lot of ICBs are looking at this. So another resource that I've created is a text message shrinker, shall we say, for people to use. So you can stick your questions and stuff into it, and it will shrink it down for you. directly. And I think that hopefully those are resources that will also help people that you can access through the links that you can see below and through the guides and all the information there. So do feel free to have a look at those. I think they're really powerful tools that people, particularly those who are not only starting their journey, but also those who are continuing on their journey, will often find will be really powerful at helping them in terms of tackling total triage.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gondalf. And Dr. Dave Triska, any last words?
Yeah, I'd say use the community really well. So there's Accurx ambassador practices now who help mentor new practices going into this. The Facebook and WhatsApp groups are really, really friendly. So and lots and lots of practices who will be local to you would be almost certainly happy to host visits. You know, we've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds now, and most practices are really happy to do that. So if you're not sure and you don't believe it, because it sounds too good to be true, which is what I'm told a lot. And then people go and have a visit somewhere. You come and see it, and then you'll go, oh yeah, actually, we should have done this a long time ago. And hopefully we'll all be able to help each other doing that.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Dave Triska. And just one last thing for me. We have our Accurx Connects conference coming in very, very soon. It's our user conference, and you are all invited to join us in London on the 29th of April for a day of learning, collaboration, and innovation. Expect industry-leading speakers, workshops, and thought-provoking discussions to leave you feeling inspired and to transform the way you deliver care. All you need to do to get all of the details and register is scan another QR code. As you can see, I've shared lots of QR codes today, and we're going to make sure that we share all of the resources in the follow-up with the recording. And I know lots of you were also asking for demos. So if you join the training sessions, you're going to have the option to see in live demos. We're going to show how it actually works. So yeah, that's all for me. I really want to thank you, both you, Dr. Gondalf, you, Dr. Dave Triska, and everyone who attended and submitted questions for your time. I hope this has been valuable. And if you have any questions, you can get in touch with us afterwards. As I said, we're going to send you an email. All you need to do is just reply to the email, and we're going to be able to help you. Otherwise, yeah, I just want to wish you a very lovely day, and I hope to see you soon. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone.
So, GP learners, if you found that really useful and effective, then definitely check out some of the resources
recording
available
has stopped.
for you down below. So they'll be tagged into the links down below as well, so you can check those out. If you want to see some of those resources as well that are available, do check out these links coming up right here. They'll take you to those extra resources that we talked about and some more content that will absolutely help to find you and tech enhance your primary care and learning. I'll catch you in the next episode. See you later.